Welcome to Automated Mobility, the people behind the wheel. In this podcast series, we get to know the experts working in the field of automated mobility. What drives them, and how do they think their work contributes to a better mobility system? I am your host, Henriette Cornet, and I am the coordinator of SHOW, a European project testing automated vehicles in real life. SHOW is led by UITP, the International Association of Public Transport. Together with 70 other partners, we investigate a future where mobility is shared, connected, and automated. In this episode, I interview Katharina Karnahl from DLR, the German Aerospace Centre. Hello, Katharina. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Let me introduce you to the audience. You are Katharina Karnahl. You work at the Institute of Transportation Systems at the German Aerospace Centre. So it's called DLR for Deutsches Zentrum für Luft- und Raumfahrt. Is it correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. You are also leading the German demonstration sites in the SHOW project, but let's keep the SHOW project aside for now and speak about what you are doing at DLR.
Thank you.
So, what can you tell us about what do you do about the institute? And the way I like to ask the guest about it is, how do you explain to your family and friends about your jobs? How do you describe it?
Okay, yes, that's actually an interesting question because the first question everyone asks is, so you're doing something in air and space, which I'm actually not doing. The German Aerospace Centre is a huge research institution in Germany. It's mainly public funded. And we have, of course, it's mainly targeting air and space, but there is a portion of it which researches ground-bound traffic as well. And there are several institutes, for example, mine, Institute for Transportation Systems, which are dealing with ground-bound traffic. We are a research institute, so what our tasks are conducting research in the field of traffic. My specific topics are actually public transport and intermodality. And
can you explain intermodality?
That means if you are using several means of transportation to conduct your journey. For example, if you go by bike to the train station and then you take the train and you take several trains and maybe even buses, and in the end you even take a private car, or you're being picked up, or you take a taxi, and all this is going to have to go to work together in one seamless journey for you. So, and the thoughts behind this from the perspective of whoever provides you the transport is the intermodality, because for you it needs to be, I'm just going from A to B.
Mm-hmm. I see. Very, very interesting already. This topic alone, I guess we could make an own episode just on intermodality. And for UITP, of course, it's also something we look at in detail. Maybe we keep this also aside. Maybe we come back to it later. I have already some question in my mind. But yes, please go ahead and continue. Telling me what you do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as we are doing research, that means we apply for smaller or mostly bigger research projects. These are funded programs, for example, by, as we are German association, the German government. And this is something we never do alone, but we do with partners. So we are always looking for, or we are working together with other companies, with other research institutions, with the industry in several consortium to conduct research for like a year, 2 or 3 on one specific topic. And the topics we are dealing with is, for example, public transport, it's road traffic, it's, as I explained before, intermodality, how does this all work together? And it's also, a big portion of it is also automated traffic and automated vehicles from different perspectives. How do they fit into this this traffic system? How is it? How do they fit technically? But also, how do people perceive them? Especially regarding the users, especially if it comes to them being used in public transport.
Mm-hmm. Great. You're already coming in the directions that we will touch after, like the automated mobility and so on. Okay, and still about you, in order to get to know you better. Okay, so if I summarize, you mentioned a research project, you mentioned the topics, but I want to dig further. What do you do like everyday basis? What is really your personal activity there when you go to the office in the morning? What do you do?
So actually, my personal business is a bit more strategic, overarching organizational task, because I'm oftentimes not the one who is doing the actual deep diving into the topic, but I do more of the acquisition, a lot of the acquisition of the project, and I do a lot of the networking within the projects we are working in, and the organization within the consortium. So we can work together, and so I have a little bit more of an overview and about the projects we do, and in one specific field. It's not that I'm doing all our projects; that would be far too many. So
okay, so you also connect the dots, I imagine, between different projects, and you have a huge network, and you know who is working in which field, and who should we talk to answer these questions.
Yes, within my organization, of course, a lot, but also with the partners.
Mm-hmm. Great. So really interdisciplinary approach, and very international, I guess, as well.
Yeah, that's true. We are already very interdisciplinary in our institute, and we have from psychologists to IT.
Because for me, DLR sounds always very engineering, technology.
Yes, but we have a huge focus also on the user perspective and the stakeholder perspective, and because in the end, if you have technical innovations, if you are not able to communicate this and to make it happen for the people, and that doesn't only mean the users, but also everybody else who is involved in this, the citizens in the city you were talking about, or even the stakeholders, even the ones who, the municipalities or the public transport providers or the industry, they all have their specific points of view, and if you don't take all of them along the way, in the end, it will be either chaotic or not working. Yeah.
It's very aligned with the way we look at things at your ATP, definitely. And also talking, for example, like if you can do a great innovation, great technology, but if the citizen is not interested in it, that doesn't matter. I mean, just doing technology for the sake of technology. Yeah. It's for at least for the mobility topic, urban mobility topic, I think that would be a pity. So I can completely rely. So it seems the way you present it that your job sounds quite motivating. Like, so do you like it? Do you like your job, and what do you like about it?
I like my job a lot. But of course, not every day. That's for sure. But I like my job because it's very diverse, and it's sometimes a bit hectic. And because I never know what's around the corner next, because we are always in different projects, and we never know if we start with a project or with the acquisition of a project. We never know if we can really get it, because we need to apply for it, and there are other partners as well who are applying for the same pot of money, I would say. But it's really interesting because because I'm having this more of a strategic position. I'm getting to know so many different people and so many different companies or organizations working in this field of transportation in general, that I always learn something new, and that's something I like.
Yeah, I can really relate. I think public transport is also a great place for that, to have this different view on things and and everything. And can you tell us what brought you here? Like, how did you end in this position? Let's say, what's a bit your background and the main step maybe that led you to this position?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer. I studied in Berlin at the Technical University, and I actually, before I started, when I was finished with school, I was not really sure what to do, and you don't know all these things which are out there. So I kind of focused on, okay, maybe let's do something technical, and I started actually with mechanical engineering and tried to look around what other students were doing. So I very shortly after I started, I came across this studies in the field of transportation planning. So that was something I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting. And it, as I grew up in Berlin, it's a huge city with the traffic problems of a big city. So I was already aware of it would probably be a good idea to find means of better the traffic. So that was something which drove me in this direction. So and then I think it's always like this. You sometimes by accident end up somewhere, and I ended up. It's not that I always wanted to do research. It just happened. I just happened to end up in this institute, and I really liked it. And I liked the idea of. I worked in a planning office before I worked into research, and it was interesting as well. But when I started with DLR, I was really it's really interesting because you get to know so many different people. You already have this interdisciplinarity within your own organization, and that's something I really liked. And I like always knowing something new, getting to know something new.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's come back to show. So in the context, so this podcast is in the context of the show project. I mentioned briefly at the beginning that you are coordinating the demo sites in Germany. I don't think that the people hearing and listening to us now relate very much to that. So we'll try to go into detail. What does it mean? What do we mean with demo sites and so on? So could you help me explain in simple terms what are we planning there? What are we planning in general with this concept of demo sites? And especially maybe for Germany, but avoiding any jargon, of course. But like trying to have a picture of what's happening.
Okay, so the show project is, as you may already have heard in other podcasts or other episodes, a huge project with many partners all over Europe, and we trying to set in place pilots for integrating automated vehicles into public transport, and all the tasks around it, and looking at this from very diverse angles, because there have been tests here and there. Somebody may have seen little shuttles running somewhere in a mile-long track or whatever. So this is, and this, to get this onto the real streets, into the real traffic situations, is the next step, I would say. And in the show project, this happens in many countries, as it does in Germany, in several cities in Germany. And in each city, there is a little, or not so little, test
objective, maybe?
Yes, I mean,
want to test something specific?
Yes, so there is one test setup, I would say, with having a few automated vehicles running. So of course, this needs a lot of preparation. That is the first part of the project. But then this will start soon. So to have them actually up and running with actual passengers, a dedicated line. It's very different. It's in every setup, and in every in all of the three sites where this happens in Germany, they focus on a certain problem, topic, issue, however you would put it. You can look at how this can work to integrate it into public transport. So to have people more or less seamlessly, customers more or less seamlessly integrating that autonomous shuttle into their journey. So if you go from A to B, you may take the train and then you take this a little autonomous shuttle to go to your final destination, or but you of course you need to know it, so it needs to be an offer of your public transport provider, and that's more or less what this is doing, this project. And in other sites, it's focusing more on the probably, even though it is with passengers, but it's more focusing on the question of if this is running through a street, how do you organize it with the rest of the traffic, and how do you do the or how smooth is it going to be integrated into regular traffic, just from the roadside perspective. And these are several angles you need to look at it to, in the end, be able, and this is still a way to go, to integrate things like this into everyday life.
Yeah, exactly. It's the perfect word is everyday life. I wanted to come back on this. I think the project, where I see the project, is also that we saw a lot of shuttles running on remote area, kind of for entertainment purposes, having a bit like getting the public familiar with the concept. I think that's very nice, and there was very positive feedback on this. But show go beyond that, really having this over longer period of time, implementation of a service, a real service of automated shared mobility, as you say, integrated to public transport. And I'm sure we will have a lot of findings, learnings, seeing how people use it with this seamless that you emphasize. I think that's a very important aspect.
Yeah, that's true.
Another question I would have also regarding what's happening in Germany. There is this integration to public transport with the focus on the customers, making everything smooth for the customer within the journey. But there is also some technical aspect behind. So of course for this case, but also what you mentioned with the interaction with the road traffic. And we have situation where an AV, for example, a shuttle or a bus, an automated bus, would be at the bus stop, and we need to merge again in the traffic. And maybe I would like to emphasize like the technicality behind it and how complex this is to be done. And why do you think, if you think this use case is something like we need to look at very much into detail, and what's hot topic there, like what is the difficulty there?
Yeah, so there are so integrating. I think it's very important to take the users into sight and to see that everything is operating smoothly for them. But this is just on top of a huge variety of technical problems. Of course, if you integrate automated vehicles, no matter if in public transport or privately owned or whatever, into regular traffic, because you have on the one hand the automated vehicle operating on an algorithm, and on the other hand you have human beings operating as sometimes erratically as they do. So. So if we stick, for example, to this use case as an automated vehicle being able to move out again from a bus stop into flowing traffic, the vehicle has, of course, sensors and lidars and whatever they do to check on their surroundings. But what they are not really able to do, the automating is to assume what another driver is doing or whatever. So what would be really interesting is to look into if in the future we see probably more and more connected vehicles, even though they are still not fully automated, but they will already be more connection between the vehicles. So this is something, if also the other vehicles, if they know the bus is going to merge out again from this bus stop, there's no need to rush till this very point and then make a full break, because this is from an emission point of view and from a fuel consuming point of view, not a very wise driving. And this is something which needs to be investigated. So because this is something which happens quite often, lane changing, merging in and out of a bus stop. And it may seem like a very little detail at this very point, but if you add it up, that counts for many minutes, that counts for many emissions, which can be saved if this is connected, and
travel time for the customer.
And travel, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I think it's interesting how you formulate things. Meaning, we can see that automated vehicles, automated mobility cannot work on its own. So it's not like in isolation that we put vehicle there and they will work, but really having this connectivity all around the city that enable these other cars, even if they are still manually driven, to kind of have interaction with the automated buses, for example, or also at traffic light, having prioritization and things like that. So I think it's interesting to see really the city as a place for connectivity, for creating more efficient traffic and so on, but without looking at automated vehicle like in isolation.
Yeah, that will not work, because we will not at one point in the future just stop everything, then ask everything out who is not automatically, and then start new again. That will not happen. So it will always be, and it will be a very, very long transition phase, and I'm not even sure that we will end up with only automatic vehicles. So that is something we really need to look into. How does everything work together? They all share the same roads.
Yep.
And the same places and the same space of the city. And that needs to be integrated.
And we addressed several aspects from automated mobility. What is for you a bit the number one? What motivates you more in this field? So what is there anything, because maybe not, maybe you're just exploring, but is there anything like a bit exciting about this topic from your point of view, really personally point of view, something you are curious to discover with all these tests that we will do in the project, or maybe in other projects that you are doing? This one thing you want to see at the end?
So that depends on what you mean with in the end, because this is really, we are on a long road. Yeah. We are on a long road. So, and
let's say for the project, let's say we will have demonstration over 1.5 years.
Yeah.
At the end, what do you say? Oh, cool. Okay, I didn't know, or oh, what a surprise.
Yeah, I'm really interested in if at one point we can say, okay, for this particular demo site, for this particular, and we are not talking about a whole city, we are talking about still very little areas. And if we can say in the end, okay, we know for this area how to operate it, and if we can say, okay, in this particular area, we know how to integrate an automated shuttle into the traffic, this would already be a lot from the technical point of view. And if then again, customers would say, yeah, this is something I can relate to, or I can imagine being a benefit in the future, that would be even more interesting, because we will for a long time not see shuttles running like, I don't know, in regular regular traffic speed-wise. So, yeah, that will be interesting.
And so with the funding that we receive for the project, the European Commission wants to explore the capability of automated mobility, and they stated already upfront some motivation for it. So the main one being safety, that is already always mentioned, but also efficiency, what we mentioned already. There is also the aspect of cost for operators, that there is some opportunity there to be explored. Where do you see the main advantage for this technology? Is there one that you could highlight more? Or?
Well, actually, I think the easiest to address is safety, because that's a technical issue, and the more you rely on the technical, of course, also the technical side can break down, but it's not as erratic as human behavior. So I think that is, but this will come in effect when we have way more automated vehicles and less human drivers. Or human, it's not only drivers, it's also, and this is a point you will never remove. There will always be the child with a ball on the street, at least that's what I hope. There will always be somebody riding a bicycle, and there will always be people around, and they will never change. And that's a good thing, because this is a human being and not a technical one. So
we don't want to become all robots.
No, no. So I think within the road traffic, it will be safer, but there is still there will always be factors which needs to be looked into. Yeah, so I'm not so sure about the efficiency, because that is a really, really long run aiming goal. That is, for a long time, we will have to really pay for developing this. So in the end, it may be more efficient, but that's the way to go. We are heading towards the end of the episode, but one question, and actually I think we could make an whole episode of it. One question I'd like to ask is, and you mentioned it a bit when you mentioned the child with the ball, and you say they have to stay there. So I can imagine already you see people around in the city moving around, and it should stay this way. So what would be the kind of the ideal city for you, including like the mobility? How will mobility look like, or how would it look like from your side, like in an ideal world? Mobility and city, like what is your vision, so to say? My hope and my vision is I don't know how realistic it is.
Sure. No, let's
to be honest,
just
but
dream.
I would love to see that that transportation comes back to what that is maybe a more female perspective. I'm not so much into this. Okay, I need to drive my car on the autobahn and go very fast. So I'd like to not have to think about, how do I get from A to B? I just say, okay, I'll go there now, and what's the best means of transportation, and without having to deal with parking spaces, with traffic jams. So, and that would, in the end, in my opinion, need to have an integration of very different means of transportation, well integrated. And if we come there if we get to a point where this is possible, and where nobody needs to say, but I need my private car because otherwise I can't go. It doesn't mean nobody needs to have a private car. But nowadays we have many people who have to rely on their private car. And as long as we have this, we have just way too many cars. So, and I hope that in the end we come to a point, or where we can have the possibility to move around with the least danger, with the least emissions, with the least negative effects of mobility. So that would be great. But this is something which I find is motivating to work in the field of transportation in general and mobility in general.
Yeah, and in this vision that you have, so I can really completely relate to what you are saying, thinking like you come, for example, a good example would be you come in a new city, you don't know the transport system of the city, you don't know how to buy the ticket, you're not sure how to move around, and in a kind of ideal city, all this would be kind of intuitive, that you know the best possibilities depending if you have luggage with you, depending like how healthy you are, things like that, that you kind of have an intuitive way to move around. But in this vision, will EVs, I mean automated vehicles, will they play a role?
Yeah, they will. So I don't think, or I don't see it as really everybody having his own private capsule and moving around or being moved around. I personally see it as a good thing for public transportation, and especially when it comes to places and times of lower demand. So that will be because these are exactly the places and times why people rely on their private cars. Because there is no bus running in the suburbs at night every 5 minutes.
Yeah, so the availability of alternative.
Yeah.
So the title of the name of the podcast is Automated Shared Mobility. What do we need for the next step? Is it more funding, more money, more work on legislation, more technology? What do we need for the next?
Mostly all of this, all of the mentioned. There is a lot of work still to be done on the technologies and the questions of combining them all. But I think there we are on a good path. So it's not that everything is done, and it needs a lot of testing and a lot of piloting still, so everything is together in one seamless field of technology. But but this needs money, of course, and but what I feel is even more important is the mindset of people, and to get the technology and the people together. And this I'm coming back to what I said in the beginning. This is something really important, and I don't know. So it is what we are talking about and what we are seeing here and what we are working in is only part of the world. So there are other parts of the world where we are far from this point. So this will also be a challenge in the future.
Definitely. I think we address very specific areas in Europe and in our society. I really like that you mentioned this mindset to have and these collaborations that is needed. So it's really much closing the loop with how we started at the beginning, saying that we all need to work together with our different discipline. Is there anything you want to add to conclude?
No, I think I've said mainly what I wanted to say. So it's a really interesting thing and a really interesting topic, and I think it needs a lot of more work on it. But I also see that it needs way more communication to get people into the idea if this is a good thing or a bad thing, and it needs from all perspectives, because I don't know. We've been here at the Ideas World Congress, and the very first day we've seen the Laborers Association outside of the building protesting because they against the idea of autonomous vehicles, because they think they will lose their jobs. And this is just one angle which needs to be taken into account. We need to, that's what I meant in the beginning, when it's not only users, it's not only citizens, it's all stakeholders which need to be taken into account. Their viewpoint needs to be taken into account if we want to have an integrated system of mobility for all.
Great final words, I would say. And yes, that's also the aim of this podcast, to make a bit more this field more known to the audience, and that we don't claim that automated mobility will save the world, but there are potentialities, there are opportunities, yes. And let's look at them from this different perspective. I think you were very clear on that. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your to sharing this view with us. It was very interesting from my point of view, and I hope for the audience too. And looking forward to work with you further on the project and having this demonstration happening next year.
Thank you very much. It was really nice, and I'm glad I could contribute to that.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Automated Mobility, the people behind the wheel. This podcast would not have been possible without the support from the Horizon 2020 program by the European Commission under the grant agreement number 875530. Check out the links for the show project and other references in the description of the episode, and subscribe to our newsletter to stay tuned. Don't hesitate to share this episode or give us feedback to it. My name is Henriette Cornet from UITP, and I hope to see you at our next episode.